Hey everyone. Today I want to talk about my experiences with demons. I have had these experiences my whole life, pretty much. And there's been different trends going on. Sometimes they've been happening less, sometimes they've happened more. And the kind of things that have exposed themselves to me, the experiences that I have been very different throughout my life. I've had different kinds of demonic encounters. I've been possessed twice, actually, by an actual demon, entering my body and taking over me for a few, maybe 15 seconds. And twice I've actually been saved by Jesus himself. So for me, these experiences are very real. They're traumatic. These are part of my life story. These are things I will never forget, and they have become a part of my spiritual experience in general. And they have been one of the reasons why I have had an easier time accepting Christ, why it happened so soon compared to other cases where people, usually take years to do this. But for me, I saw the truth, and when I saw it, I just knew it was. And because of things I have been through, because of already existing problems, and also these experiences with these demons and whatnot. So today I'm going to talk about them very briefly. I'm going to bring up the most memorable ones. And before I do this, I first want to address that, to you Muslims who criticize me for having these experiences, who tell me that I should probably check myself into some psychiatric ward, let me just ask you this. In Islam, these beings are actually mentioned. Everybody who knows Islam, at least generally, who knows what Islam teaches, would understand that demons, the spiritual realm exists also in Islam. There are mentionings about demons. There are mentioning about jinns. There are mentionings about Muhammad being possessed. Both in the Quran and in the Hadiths. So you have this spectrum of the spiritual realm even in Islam. You have the mentioning of Satan, you have the mentioning of angels, you have the mentioning of these things in Islam as well. And there are cases where people have been possessed, and it has been taught in Islam. And it also have been mentioned how these things have been dealt with in Islam. So in your own scriptures, these entities exist, and they have showed themselves to people, and they have possessed people. And you know this, and you know that it even happened to your prophet. So this is not news to you, and it shouldn't be strange at all that a person comes out and tells you that they have these experiences. And I can assure you that I am not the only one. There are many, many people around the world who have these experiences. I've seen multiple cases, especially people who have come out with their testimonies and such, but also videos, documentaries, blogs where people have explained these things, forums, different religious forums where people share their experiences about these demons. And I've noticed that it's very unlikely that everybody's making it up, because they're all talking about the same things that has happened to them, but in different ways. So there are things they have in common. There are key elements that connect these experiences that people talk about, and that also have happened to me. So when I see these documentaries or these people talking about their experiences, I recognize what they're saying, and it just like lights up in my head like a light bulb, that I get it. I get that this is real. And you have, basically you have Muslims believing in this, and you also have Christians believing in this. Probably Jews as well, because there are demons mentioned. And the spiritual realm is mentioned also in the Old Testament. You have the Nephilim, you have the fallen angels mentioned, you have demons in general mentioned in all of these religions. I know, Christianity isn't really a religion, but I'm going to use it just for the sake of explaining in this video. That's why I say that. So in all of these 3 different faiths, you have demonic experiences and cases, pretty much. Both cases where people are possessed and also when they have come across these entities. And I had that even in my own community. Family members, relatives who had these experiences, not like me, not at all, but occasionally they would have these dreams, they would have these things happening to them, and it exists. If amongst these major belief systems in this world, the millions of people are following, these elements exist. So what I'm trying to say is that it's a common thing. And so you guys should not be surprised one bit. And you should know more than anyone that these things are not sicknesses. They're not illnesses in any way. A lot of people who have experienced these things are not sick. I can tell you that I was sent to a health expert. I don't remember if it was a psychiatrist or psychologist, but my parents did take me to one of these people who had to check on me and see what was wrong. Because I did talk about these experiences when I was very young. I told my parents I had these things, and they got worried, of course, like any other parent would. So they wanted to find out what was wrong with me. And there was no diagnosis. Nobody set a diagnosis for me that I was schizophrenic or that it was anything wrong with me. The only explanation they had was that I was a troubled kid, in the sense that, she's bullied in school. She reads a lot of children's books, and she has a vivid imagination. That was the usual. I mean, not only did I hear that a lot from people who would assess my mental health as a child, both normal checkups, but also these checkups specifically for my demonic experiences. That was usually what they would say, but when they would assess these experiences that I told them about that was demonic, they would tell us that there was nothing wrong with me other than that I was watching too much imaginary things. I was reading too many books about it. And I mean, it is true. I was reading a lot of books, children's books when I was a kid, but I didn't watch horror movies. And these children's books, they weren't exactly about some horrifying demon attacking me, It's just, and there are so many kids who do this, so many kids who have a vivid imagination, who are a little bit above average intelligence. They have these characteristics, and not all of these kids have these experiences. And if that was the case, if that was really the case, then these entities wouldn't show themselves any longer as I grew older. But it kept on going. It never stopped. And it happened intensively, actually. Even, I think, most of the most horrible experiences actually happened during that phase when I was leaving Islam and becoming Christian. And I wasn't reading children's books then. I can promise you that. So to me, it's all nonsensical. How they can just, when they don't understand something, usually in medical science, if you don't have an understanding of something, if you're the expert and there is no diagnosis, there's no knowledge of this thing, you get all these others, other diagnoses or whatever you call it, things that they label you with, that there really is an unknown cause for it. There's not much science about it, and just unexplainable occurrences in the mind that cannot be explained with science is usually just shoved under the carpet, under the rug, just there's no second thought that it could be a spiritual thing. And of course, they're not going to say, hey, you know what, you should consider that maybe it's a spiritual thing. So it's usually just people who believe in the spiritual realm who tend to draw these conclusions, because they understand that these things do exist. They have experienced it, they have seen it, and there's no explanation to it. So, I mean, what better explanation do you have, Anyhow, so I just wanted to say that to those who criticize me for being insane because I have these experiences. All right, so I want to talk about just quickly. Do I blame Islam for these experiences? Do I blame Islam? And do I think that it's entities that are part of Islam that have caused this? I honestly don't know. That's something I'm still thinking about and researching on, because it's difficult to find evidence for that. My speculations about Allah being Satan, it's still just a theory. I haven't confirmed it yet. But I pick up these different elements that I have seen, and I draw that preliminary conclusion until I see anything better, of course. So far that's just a theory that I have, but I feel that there's a lot that explains this, that points towards this at least, that Islam does have a satanic root of it. If it wasn't Satan, then I really believe that it was a very powerful demon that did reveal these verses to Muhammad. And there are many reasons for this. You can, for instance, you can look in the Bible and the Quran, you can see that they are both very much opposites in terms of how they explain God, that Allah comes off as the way the Bible's God explains Satan. You also have these examples of how Muhammad himself was demonically possessed and sometimes directly influenced by Satan and gave people the false revelations. That's one of those examples is in that video that I posted on my channel before I uploaded this video that I'm doing now. It talks about that. I think I just spoiled it. I shouldn't have said that. But it talks about how, sorry, I apologize to the person who made that video because I just realized I spoiled it. But that video is very powerful because it tells you one example of how Muhammad was demonically he was possessed by Satan at one point, or influenced by Satan, I mean, to reveal a false revelation. And so it gets you thinking. Not only does it give less credibility to Islam that its own prophet was influenced by Satan, but also this was one example of how Islam's own prophet was possessed a lot and was influenced a lot by Satan. And you also know how the Quran was revealed to him. It was revealed by this angel of light, and it might as well have been Satan, might as well have been a demon. And you see elements of this in the Bible confirming that, entities that appear as God or as angels and is not of the Bible's teachings or doctrines. If they do things differently and they go against the core teachings and principles of the Bible, then they cannot really be of God. So you have all these elements in Islam that sort of points towards that Islam has it's rooted in a satanic doctrine. So I have recognized that, and I find it very strange, and it's something worth thinking about. On top of that, you have jinns mentioned, and these jinns they are very interesting because the way they are mentioned is that they are equal with human beings. They are believers in Allah and His teachings, so they follow Allah, and I find that so strange that they're obedient to Him, and that these jinns can interact with human beings and whatnot. And it has sort of got me thinking: could these jinns be demons? Could these jinns be Satan's followers that he uses to put Muslims in, to terrorize Muslims when they deviate from, is that what the word you use? When they go away from Islam. That perhaps Allah uses these jinns to kind of scare them into coming back. Because that was the trend that I experienced in my life. I saw that whenever I started questioning Islam or kind of avoiding Allah, avoiding the practicing parts of Islam, I would all of a sudden have these demonic experiences, and I would wake up terrified and run, literally run to the prayer carpet to do some prayers. And as soon as I got right back into that flow of, the Muslim flow, these things wouldn't show themselves in a while. So all these things put together have just been a reason for me to lean in that direction of assuming that Allah is Satan, but I have yet to confirm it. So there are many evil elements of Islam that I have noticed personally when I have criticized Islam and I have studied it. And so Islam might not be the cause. It might not be what caused these demonic experiences for me, but there are definitely demonic elements in Islam that I believe could create this platform for these beings to more easily get to you and control you. And let's not forget that Islam is against, these most important teachings of the Bible, of how Jesus was crucified, and that, that there is a council of God, that there are many different Elohims and all that stuff, that it's not really following that storyline. It doesn't follow the way that the Bible is. It doesn't have any continuation of it, because it totally just annihilates some of the most important teachings. So in many ways, Islam is very anti-Christ. It's anti-Christ-like in many ways. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these demons that I've come across in my life, that Islam has something to do with it. But exactly how, I don't know yet. I really don't know. So what is it that I have seen? What are these demonic experiences that I have had in my life? There are many. And, I've had these both when I've been awake and when I've been asleep. And a lot of the times when I'm sleeping, it's not just dreams. It's also like another spiritual realm, somewhere between reality and sleep. And I've noticed there are specific characteristics for this, to be able to identify that I am in this different realm and not actually having a normal dream. And that difference is usually that when you are in this different realm, at least what happened to me was that everything that was in my environment, let's say I was sleeping in my room, everything that was in my room, all the objects, they would be in the exact same place in that realm. Everything would look exactly the same as if I was awake, but I would know I am not awake, but I would be fully aware of my consciousness, and that I am in this realm. And everything that would happen to me, it would feel real. The pain would be real. And sometimes when I woke up, I would still feel that pain. So these experiences have been, to me, enough to understand that when I've had these demonic encounters, it has happened in 3 different realms. Being awake, being between sleeping and being awake, and also being asleep. I'm not going to talk about it in the form of a timeline, because these experiences that I've had, they've happened a little bit everywhere. But when I was a child, though, I have to mention this. When I was a child, and at first I started having these experiences, I was about, 4 years old. It would start very, very smooth. They were kind. They were really kind to me at first. They were childlike. They would be playful. My very first experiences with these demons was that they would make my toys come alive. They would make objects in my room come alive. I would sit and talk to my toys. I would sit and talk to suitcases. Real suitcases that we would have in our rooms. I would talk to them. And these objects that came alive, it happened while I was awake. So I was in sleep. And these, so these demonic experiences, at first, they kind of tricked me into thinking that they were safe and they were fun and playful, that they were my friends, that this was some normal thing that I was supposed to go through. So when they would show themselves, it was like that they would talk to me through these objects. But they would also, I remember that there would be masked men. I know this sounds insane, but men who would stand at the doorway of the room that I was sleeping in with a mask on. And that mask usually was a playful mask. It had some kind of connection with some comic book or, like Superman, Batman, these things. But it was a masked man, and it would stand there by the doorstep staring at me. I also had one experience when I would wake up in the middle of the night to 5-6 people. They were not real beings, obviously, not human beings, but they were sort of dark shadow people with different masks and whatnot that they would wear to kind of play it off as something playful and childlike. And they would stand there around my bed, surrounding my bed, and they would whisper to each other and tell each other, "Be quiet, don't wake her up." So I would look at this and I would think, what on earth is going on here? You have these, I understand they're playful and all, but this is getting creepy. So this started happening, and I, coupled with this, I would also have horrible sleep experiences. Everybody who knew me knew that I could not have a good night's rest. Every night there would be something. I would walk in my sleep. I would wake up in my sleep crying, being anxious, depressed. I would have some strange obsessive patterns of songs that wouldn't leave my head. I would have just very difficult time falling asleep. I would be terrified of the night, of the dark, because I knew these things would come alive and they would happen to me. But in general, sleep was very problematic for me at that time. So all that complicated sleep started walking hand in hand with these demonic experiences. So it would further develop into me having terrible nightmares of these masked men chasing me around. I remember there was one specific dream where there was a masked man that would always chase me, so that I would be forced to hide under a table in a dream. This would happen. I still remember I had this dream probably 10, 12 times. It was always that masked man running after me, scaring me, trying to terrorize me, and then I would run and hide under a table. And then I would wake up from that dream. So they would start very soon in my life, very early on. They would start with these nightmares where they would show themselves in there to cause me terror, make me frightened. In general, just be frightened of sleep, of the dark. Cause me to wake up anxious and have this anxiety in general, and fear and depression around sleep. And of course, this followed with me as I was awake throughout my days. I would be distressed by these experiences. But I was a child. I didn't know what was going on. I thought this was just a part of being a child and a part of the tough experiences that I had in school and whatnot. Because at the time I was bullied. But these experiences of these demons, they would develop. They would take on new shapes. All of a sudden I started seeing things in the dark. I started seeing shadows moving around. Objects that started coming alive and become shadows and fly around my room. I would see things moving. And I was 100% sure that I was awake and these things would take form and terrify me. I would start seeing patterns in the dark. It was usually geometrical shaped patterns, metallic, it's very hard to explain. Just a disgustingly metallic, geometrical pattern in the air. Imagine you're lying in your bed, it's dark at night and you're awake, and you see these I can't explain it, but there's this frizz or whatever you call it in the air, and it's almost as if it's not, I don't even know how to explain it, but it was just every time I saw this strange pattern in the air, I'd feel nauseous, I would feel panic, and I would be very, very anxious. So much so that I would have to get up from my bed and run to the bathroom and wash my face and drink some water. And I always did that to sort of, I thought that would calm me down and that was the solution. So that's what I did every time this happened. But what it really was that it just kept on going until it had to stop on its own, really. I had no control of this whatsoever. It was just a matter of time. Sometimes it took a longer while, so I had to sit up, turn on the light, play around with something, with a toy or whatnot, and it would go away. So things started happening visually. And this sort of carried on, but as I grew older, it happened throughout my entire upbringing, my teenage years. This pattern, geometrical pattern stuff, kept on going. It happened occasionally, especially when I had fever. When I was physically weak, it would come and terrorize me. It was terrible, terrible feeling. I can't even explain it. Sometimes I would just feel just terrified, mixed with nauseous, mixed with, just imagine everything you normally would feel when you're sick, when something has happened to you, these normal symptoms of sicknesses. I would just get that suddenly, from nowhere. Sudden depression, just utter depression. I still remember my brother used to cheer me up. He would put me on a blanket and he would, kind of drag me around the floor as if it was some kind of sleigh ride, just to cheer me up, because I was so depressed and I didn't know why. It just hit me, and it would leave. It would be something occasional, and it's just not normal for a child to feel these things. So looking back at it, I know it was not even the slightest bit normal, and that it was not of this world. These visual patterns that I saw, I also started hearing things following this. Again, this happened a lot when I was sick, but also when I was perfectly normal and healthy. And what I heard was voices, and it was always 200, 300 people screaming at me or being angry at me, or I still remember sometimes they were saying things to me to convey a feeling. And that feeling was either pity, that they pitied me. It was blame, that they would blame me for something. I didn't know what it was. And anger, blame, and pitying me. These were the three feelings they conveyed when they did this. So I was, I couldn't distinct the voices, what they were saying. I couldn't really tell what they were saying, but in my head, I felt an emotional wave of voices. I don't know if you can make sense of that. Conveying a feeling to make me feel small, to make me feel terribly destroyed within and cave in to these voices. This was a common thing and happened many times in my life. Again, especially when I was sick. Of course, the nightmares. I don't remember them in detail. The childhood nightmares, I don't remember so much more than the masked man that would chase me under the table. But I do remember two things that really, really terrified me. One time I was lying in my bed and I was fully awake again. And I would look down on the floor next to my bed and I would see a woman with a hijab on, lying dead deceased next to my bed on the floor with a child in her arms, with an infant also that was dead and wrapped up in cloth in her arms. They were lying there together, dead on the floor. And I saw this once, and I can't explain the feeling. It was horrific. It was horrific, and I was a child, and I saw this. So this happened once. Another time, I remember I was fully awake, and there would be something that came into my room. I'm going to get to that soon, about things that came to my room. But this was one of those things that happened. Suddenly, from nowhere, me being fully awake, there was this thing that just started floating into my room. I can't even explain what it was. It wasn't a human, but it wasn't something with wings or anything like that. It was a gray, disgustingly looking, slender, floating spirit that looked lifeless. It had not a single color on its body. And it didn't have any clothes on, but it wasn't normally shaped. It wasn't like a human being. But it took on the form of a human. And it stared me dead in the eye with no emotion on its face. And it would float into my room, slowly, towards my bed. And I still remember this so clear as day, because it was one of the most frightening things I've ever seen in my life. The terror that I felt when I saw this. I can't even describe it. I looked at it and I thought it was death. I thought it was death. I thought I was going to die. And I was just still, utterly frozen in terror, seeing this thing. And what did I do? Well, I did what any child would do. I jumped in bed and I covered myself in the blankets, hoping it would go away. And then I looked and I saw that it was gone. Just ridiculous. It's ridiculous how scary it was, and how I could even have experienced this. So these were my main memories from when I was a child, experiencing these things. And as I grew older, in my teenage years and then in my adult years, this stepped up. They stepped up their game. They started coming into my room a lot. They started coming in. I was always awake, always. It was before I fell asleep. I still remember it as clear as a day. And they would come in, these beings. And every time they came in, I would feel that they were coming in. And what happened was that I would lie in my bed. It's a terrifying thing, and I think about it. I would lie in my bed, and I was trying to fall asleep, and these things would come in. It was something. It didn't show itself physically, but it was something in there. And every time it came into my room, I would feel that it was in there with me. It was a presence, an evil presence. And it would come in, and it would float towards me. And I could feel its presence, not only in just feeling, knowing it was there. I felt my blood pressure would usually increase by itself, not in a reaction to it, but I would know it was there when my what's it called, the sympathetic system, the fight or flight system, when it would start activating. And I would feel this strong frequency. I can't explain it, but it was like a strong bass-like frequency that would become so intensive in my head and my body, and I would just know that they were there. I got very familiar with this feeling. It would happen a lot of times, and I knew that there was something that was with me in my room, and it would approach me. Sometimes I would be touched by this thing. From the outside of my blanket, I would feel a touch. Sometimes I would hear footsteps, very light footsteps coming towards me. Sometimes I heard knocks, light knocks and cracks in the walls. The point is, I was not alone. And these things came to me, and I would know they were with me. And my default protection was always to turn my back, from this thing and lie very still, you know, the way that we were taught that you would do with if a you know, a wild animal approaches you and you have to lie still. I did that, but with these things. I thought that it would help. And obviously it didn't do much other than that I would become a little bit less frightened. So I would just lie like that, terror, just in utter terror and panic, with my shoulders up, pretty much like this, until I fell asleep. That happened a million times throughout my life. Okay, so I want to fast forward. I want to fast forward into the time when I was an adult. I was in my early 20s, and my grandma had just recently passed away. This was a very difficult time in my life, and everybody else who I knew, we were all going through this difficult time. And I remember a few days after she had passed, maybe about a week or 2 weeks afterwards, I don't remember really. It was at the beginning of the new year. I had a very, very terrifying dream. This was not the first time I had a similar dream like this. Many times before I had woken up feeling afraid, as if Satan was with me in my room, that kind of fear. But this time it was different, very different. What happened was that I was sleeping, and I was not in a normal dream. I was in this other realm, in between a dream and reality. And I would lie in my bed, and I remember that just seeing everything in detail, almost as if it was reality. I was lying in my bed and I was dead. And my body was being flung from one dimension to another. I don't remember if I went up or down, but I remember that I was being, the place I was lying in, the way it looked didn't really change, but I knew that I was being flown to another realm, and then from there to another realm, and then from there to another realm. It kept on going. And in my thought, as a Muslim, I thought, oh, I'm dead. I'm probably being, moved but to another dimension, probably heading towards a place where I will be judged. I had these thoughts as it was happening. And I remember looking in the corner of that room after I had been flung through different realms. After a couple of realms, I remember looking at the corner of my room and seeing a light coming out of that corner. And that light was very, very bright. And it just came out of the corner like a flower. It was very strange. And it terrified me so much so I couldn't even look at it. So I turned away. And then all of a sudden I was in a room. All of these rooms I'm talking about, I know of these rooms. These were the rooms of our home. Everything was in exact place as it was in reality. Now I was in another one of these rooms. And that door was locked. I couldn't get out. And I started panicking. And all of a sudden I looked down my hands and I saw the Quran in my hands. And the Quran, when I looked at it, every letter of the Quran was moving up and down, flowing around, flying around, literally, coming out of the page, just coming alive and doing all kinds of things. And I would look at it in total shock and being utterly terrified. And I would try my best to just get out of that room. And I remember after I came out of that room, I would find my mother and my aunt would sit on the floor, and they would be doing tajweed. Muslims know what this is. It's you read the Quran as it is in Arabic, in a very rhythmic, melodic fashion. They would be doing this together with their hijab on. My aunt was also wearing a hijab. They were sitting there together on the floor, and I was looking at them. And they looked at me and they were terrified. So much so that their faces turned white. And I didn't know why. And I remember that when I saw them being that terrified, all of a sudden I started floating up. And I looked on either end of my shoulders, and I saw that I had wings. I would be flying up. And that's when I realized that's why they were terrified, is because I'd become some kind of flying entity. And as I was flying, I was reciting things from the Quran. And that is the dream I had a few days after the New Year's that I was talking about. And when I woke up from that dream, I woke up with utter terror, terrified for my life. The only thing I could think of was, I have to do the prayer. I have to do the Muslim prayer. I have to do it or I'm going to go to hell. And I remember feeling in the room that I was in that there were these evil beings with me. And it literally felt like Satan was there with me, like I explained earlier. That I was not alone, that Satan was with me and these evil beings were with me. So I thought, I have to do the Muslim prayer. So I ran to the bathroom, and when I ran there, what I was going to do was I was going to do the ablution, which is the Muslim, where you wash your entire body in a specific fashion so that you can do the prayer. I was going to do that, and I found my mom there in the bathroom doing her ablution. So it's happened to be my dream happened to occur. It occurred at the exact time for the Fajr prayer. Fajr prayer is the morning prayer. And so immediately when I woke up from it, my mom was already preparing for it. And she saw me coming towards her in just terror, feeling... She saw that I was terrified, and she was like, what happened? And I was like, I had this Muslim dream. And I'm scared to death, and I have to do the prayer. And she was like, that's very good. That was a dream from God. You were very blessed. And she saw it as a good thing. That's how you see it as a Muslim. So I hurried to the ablution, and I started doing it. And from that dream, actually, I think it was 2011, after that dream, that was a point in my life as a grown-up where I started becoming more of a faithful Muslim. I started paying attention to the hadiths. I started looking to become a more devout Muslim. It's happened after that dream. Today I look at that dream and I can see so many demonic elements of it. There was nothing godly about it. And it actually encouraged me to go back to Islam, which I had been sort of avoiding throughout my teenage years a little bit for various different reasons. And I thought of this at the time as a call back to Islam. So that was one of the most terrifying things that happened to me with these demons in my early adult years. But the worst things, I have to say, the worst things were when I was in the midst of questioning Islam. And this happened a year ago in November, December, when I started for the first time actually looking into it, criticizing it, analyzing it objectively for what it was, not to become more of a devout Muslim, but to actually see if it was true or not. And I remember in this process, when I had just left Islam, the very day I had left Islam, and the nights that followed, that's when the nightmare began. It was a horrible, horrible time in my life. Not in general, but in I'm talking about the actual sleep experience was a nightmare. All of a sudden, it was like I had gone back to my childhood when these things happen on the regular. Now everything was intensified, everything was more violent, and I couldn't get a single night's good rest. Not a single night. I'll tell you what happened. a couple of things that happened was that I would be woken up, always somewhere between 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the morning. And I would be woken up by angry beings in my room. They were so angry with me. They were, it was almost as if they would be, if they were real human beings standing there, they would be literally standing like this and looking at me and screaming. That was the anger that I felt from them. And I knew they were back. I didn't know what they were still. Even though I had left Islam, still didn't know what these things were. I just thought again, this is the spirit realm. They're attacking me again because, I don't know, I've left Allah. And this happened every night. I would be woken up between 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock, and these things would be angry. They would make noises in my room. They would make noises in the radiator. They would make noises in the walls, loud cracking noises, almost as if you would lie there at that hour, you would think that the whole room was going to collapse on you. I would hear sounds like, it sounded like flies or bees that would fly into the walls, literally. Imagine 200 bees that or flies that would crash. They would crash into the walls, and they would make that kind of noise. I would be woken up by that. I would be woken up by, let me think, knocks. It was always in threes. There were 3 knocks behind me, behind my head where I was sleeping. That would wake me up. 3 loud knocks, like that. There would be 3 loud knocks, the floor beneath me, because we lived in a big house. We had 3 floors. The floor underneath me, there would be 3 knocks there as well. And I knew nobody in our household would go and knock in the middle of the night. It made no sense. I knew their patterns, I knew what they were doing, and nobody would do that. And I would hear 3 knocks. Sometimes I would be awake, and obviously I didn't have a good sleeping rhythm when this happened, because it ruined my sleep. So sometimes I would be awake around 3 o'clock and whatnot, and I would hear 3 knocks on the door, one of the doors, the entrance doors of our home. I would hear 3 knocks. It was insane. I would hear these knocks, and coupled with these knocks, as it got worse, I would hear giggling. Girls that would giggle. Girl voices. So, I mean, at one point I thought, somebody is pranking us. Somebody is coming to our house, knocking 3 times and giggling and running away. But it made no absolute sense, and I had to conclude that this was not real, as in it wasn't happening in real life. It was somewhere in the spiritual realm. This scared me. This scared me to, I mean, should I say death? I don't know, but I was terrified. I knew they were under attack. I was under attack. They were coming after me because I had left Islam. So I thought, God is going to zap me. He's going to zap me any moment now. This was just one thing that happened at that phase. And I'm talking weeks. Maybe more than a month this was going on. Another thing that would happen was that I would be experiencing nausea, staleness. My body would just feel incredibly stale. I would have pains. I would have stomach ache. I would feel dizzy. I would have these symptoms of sickness, but I wouldn't be sick. And I would wake up in the morning. I would be perfectly fine. I would have whisperings. I remember at one point a woman whispered in my ear for I think 3 seconds or something. She was speaking. Was it whispering? Was it speaking? I don't remember, but she was doing it in my ear, and I was awake reading the Quran, and she would whisper in my ear, and I just lost it. I was like, what's going on here? I remember the nightmares, which were awful. But one particular thing that happened in the in-between realm that I was talking about was that I would wake up in this realm, and I would be stuck, physically stuck. My body wouldn't move. Either it was my tongue would move, or my entire body would be locked. It would be locked. It was like somebody had a hold of me, a grip of me. And a lot of the times I would lie on the side when I was stuck, and I would try my best to move. I really needed to move and get out of this hold. I knew that one of these spiritual beings were having a hold of me. This was a terrifying thing that I experienced. It happened many times. And every time I would look over my shoulder, I couldn't move my eyes even, but I could see in my peripheral vision that there would be an entity there with me, which looked like a shadow with a head and a cloak on. But it would have these white eyes, or, it would be these eyes cut up, or whatever you call it, in this utter darkness. And it would stand there in the corner as I was totally locked. And I would wait and wait and wait, and then eventually it would let go, and I could wake up from that dream. This started happening a lot when I left Islam. When I became Christian, oh boy. Imagine these things I just told you that happened when I left Islam. This happened more intensively. So much so that I would go to sleep every night, and I would lie in my bed with the Bible, holding on to it, literally putting my hand on it or something, putting the Bible, I had 2 Bibles at the time, I would put them next to me in my bed, and I would sometimes have the cross underneath my pillow. And when these entities came and they terrorized me, I would read verses in the Bible, hoping that they would go away. And it didn't help. And I would just lie there. I don't know. It was a nightmare. I don't know how I got through those nights, to be honest. And when I think back on it, I just remember the dreams that I had. Gosh, those dreams. It was as if it was fully real. It was one time I was stuck in a room, and there would be dust flying all over the room, and there would be books, and there would be a man guiding me to these books, and who seemed peaceful. Then eventually I would see that he guided me to all this knowledge, and it felt insidious. Once I had a dream of some being that took on the shape of my friends that were comforting me. They were pitying me, and I was feeling sorry for myself. And then when I woke up, I realized they were not my friends. These were, evil beings that had taken on the shape of my friends, because they were pulling that pitying card again. And once I had a dream of this man who owned a hotel, that he guided me to his suite, and then he led me around his room. He wanted to show me his construction. He said that we're building this. You're going to be so impressed. We're building this thing. And he had like the most expensive suite I've ever seen. It was highly technological, and I would look out the window of this suite, and he would be like, look what we're making. Look what's in the works. And I would see a tower with its roof would be in the shape of an eye, a big black eye. And in the center of this eye was a cross, which was flowing. It was filled with the blood of Jesus Christ. And he would look at it, and I remember looking at him, and I felt terrified of him. I thought, this is not normal. This is evil. In my actual dream, I felt this. I felt this is a very, very evil being that I'm standing with in this room, and he is mocking Jesus Christ. I had these awful dreams. Once, actually, this dream happened 2 or 3 times. I would be led away from a path that everybody else was walking. There were a few people who were walking a different path, and I would walk on that path. And it would lead me to this room every time, and it would be a man there who, again, was one of those demons that held me, that controlled me, my body, so I couldn't move. And I would lie there, and I would be able to see, again, in my peripheral vision, I would see this man walk next to me and sit in a chair. And I remember he had black clothing, and his boots were black. He had black boots, and I remember him as the boots man. He had these black boots, and I would be the fear that I felt of this man, that I knew how evil he was. I would, with all my might, I would try and form sentences with the tongue that would move, and I would ask him, "Who are you? What is your name?" Over and over again, I would ask, "What is your name? Tell me your name. What is your name?" And he would. I couldn't see it, but I knew he was laughing at me. I mean, this was awful. So that was just a general idea of what I went through. And that wasn't even all. So what was it that changed everything? Jesus changed everything. One day I had, after numerous weeks of this terrible sleep, I would be totally destroyed. I would wake up in tears, just crying in my bed, feeling hopeless, feeling like I was going to die, everything was going to be destroyed, that they were going to suck the life out of me, they're going to take away all my energy so that I could not pursue my faith in Christ. And I remember talking to my partner then, and he would tell me, he would ask me, have you tried rebuking them? And I said, "What are you talking about, rebuking?" And he was like, "You should try rebuking them in the name of Jesus Christ, and then you should see what happens." So I thought, okay, I've never tried this before. I mean, I do believe in him. I have accepted Christ as my Lord, my Savior, but I've never tried rebuking these entities ever with him. It just sounded like a fairy tale. It's just, really rebuking them in Jesus Christ, as if that's going to work. That's sort of how I thought. But I thought, it's worth a shot. So I had a dream after that. And in that dream, they attacked me again as usual. But I for some reason, I couldn't remember this advice. Like, it just couldn't be brought into that dream. But I remember the dream after that. I had thought of rebuking them in the name of Jesus Christ so many days before that dream, that I actually managed to remember that advice in that dream. And in this dream, again, I was being held by this demon. My body couldn't move. I felt this pressure every time I was being stuck. There was this pressure in my chest, as like somebody was holding it. That's what it felt like, and squeezing it. Sometimes they would squeeze my ribs. I don't know why. It was my left rib. Sometimes they would squeeze that too. The point is, I would lie there, and I would, for the first time in my life of these experiences, I would remember this advice of rebuking them in the name of Jesus Christ. So I tried it. I lied there, stuck to the wall, literally. Imagine a human being, this is the wall, and a human being literally like this, trying their best to move, turn around so that they could at least see the demon they're dealing with. And I remember the words coming to my mind of Jesus, and I was thinking, I couldn't move my tongue as usual, but I was thinking, Jesus. I kept thinking it. Messiah, Jesus, these names I have learned. King of Kings, Lord of Lords. And then I said, in the name of Jesus Christ. And I kept saying it, and then I remember feeling that my tongue could move. It could force these words out. And I said, in the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to leave. And I remember, all of a sudden, I could start moving my limbs. It was like magic. I could start moving everything. And slowly but surely, I could turn around. And as I was getting my power back, my control back, this demon started fading more and more. And then it was gone, and then I woke up. And I thought, wait, what just happened? For the first time in my life, I had rebuked a demon with the name of Jesus Christ. I had controlled them. For the first time in my life, I was in shock. All I could do was cry, because this was a big deal for me. Here I was solving a 20 plus year problem with these things, the pain that they had caused me. And I had for the first time gotten rid of them. So after I did this, for some strange reason, they would come back strong. They would come back. It was almost as if they knew I had figured it out. So they were going to come back really, really strongly now and really hurt me. So I remember I had one dream. This happened in May 2016. I would have this dream. Again, it wasn't a normal dream. It was in this different realm between reality and dream. And I would lie there. Wait, no, I wasn't lying. I was standing up. And I was standing there with someone else. I don't know who it was. I don't remember who it was. It might even have been me. It sounds strange, but sometimes I had these dreams where I would see myself and I would also be with myself, almost as if I was two people. So it was two people, me and me, in that room. And there was this, those dream catchers that look like spider webs? I had that hanging over my head. And I was stuck. Again, as usual, I would panic. Couldn't move. The dream catcher was there. I would look to my left. I would see a demon looking like that gray. Remember I said gray being that floated into my room? Looking like that one, but sort of half sitting, half lying on a table like this, with so much arrogance and mockery in its expression. As I was standing there under that dream catcher, totally controlled by it, and I started I actually stood there and I started thinking, wait, Jesus, I could use Jesus here. And I remember myself, the other myself, if you understand what I mean, that stood next to me would tell me, rebuke him in the name of Jesus. And then I would think, and I would start formulating the sentence. It was difficult. This was new for me. So I started thinking, Jesus, Yeshua. And I started saying it. I started saying in the mighty name of Jesus Christ, in the name of Yeshua. And when I said in the name of Yeshua, this was the first time I'd ever uttered Jesus' real name. That demon got so angry that he interrupted me. He screamed at me. He screamed, no. Imagine no caps lock with three, what's it called? Screaming symbols after that. No was literally what he screamed, with a dark voice, dark, typical demonic voice that I've experienced in my life. He would scream that to me when I reached Yeshua. And I was totally shook. I was like, well, oh no, I have said something now that's really upset him. And then the other me would say, continue. And then I would say, in the name of Yeshua, in the name of Jesus Christ, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, my Lord, my Savior, I rebuke you, evil spirit. I said something like, I don't remember the detail. And then I remember as I kept saying this, he got angrier and angrier. And I felt more and more pain. And I remember just how the longer I kept saying this, it didn't take long for me to start moving. I could start moving and looking at this demon and seeing what it was. And it was in utter distress. It was just in pain. It was screaming at me. It was just all over the place. And then I remember just being so afraid, and I was thinking and saying out loud, I was saying, Jesus, help me. when I said that, the most incredible thing in my entire life happened. I can't even explain it. It was so beautiful. I was taken to another realm, another dimension, all of a sudden, when I said that. And this place, it was incredible. It was incredible. It was an environment that was purely blue. It was blue water, just clear blue water surrounding me. I've never seen such water in my life. It was electric. It was light that was being thrown around in this water. And it was just such high energy water with light and pureness. And I saw this from another perspective. I was looking down at it and I was seeing my own body standing in I don't know if you guys have seen the anatomical position where a human being stands like this, upright. And I saw my body standing like that. And I didn't see my body parts. I saw right through this body of mine. I saw not the organs, but I saw the nervous system. I saw the nerves throughout my entire body. And I saw electricity and everything going through it. And I saw my brain and all the activity, everything that happens in the brain. I saw it. I was transparent. Seeing myself transparent, literally standing there in this sea of light water. I don't know if that makes any sense. And then from nowhere, Jesus, I cannot be more sure it was Jesus. It couldn't have been anything other than Jesus, because I felt so relieved, happy, and pure. When he approached me, it was a man with dark brown hair, a little bit of mustache. I don't know what was going on with his face. And he would approach me slowly. It was as if time was slowed down somehow. And he would approach me from this side, and tower over me. He would tower over my right shoulder. And I could see a glimpse of his face, and it was the kindest face, with so much pureness and kindness radiating from it, towering over me. And he put his right hand, it was a big hand. I mean, he was not normally, it wasn't a normal sized man. This was his hand was as big as this shoulder probably. And he put his hand on this transparent body of mine. And when he did, and I saw a glimpse of his smile, I saw that light that I was bathed in. I saw it being poured through my body, through every nerve, all the axons, everything. It was just being poured through it into my brain, and the light that was mixed with it. And I remember after this happened, I was being removed from this place. I was being removed from that area where the demon was. There was no more demon. And I was being brought up, awake in real life. And when I woke up, I can tell you this. Every time I've had demonic dreams, as I've explained, I've woken up in terror, in fear, distress, in tears. I woke up for the first time in my life after a demonic dream, feeling pure, feeling healed, feeling saved, I felt cleansed, I felt helped, I felt showered in Jesus' love. That's how I felt. And I was smiling like, so happy. I don't think I've ever been. Maybe I had a few occasions I've been that happy in my life. And I just felt so much joy and peace and love at that moment. And I just knew I had met Jesus. He had healed me. He had saved me from that demon, his grip, and probably had saved me and protected me from coming demonic occurrences. And guess what? I turned out to be right. This happened in May last year. I didn't have a single demonic experience from May until, I would have to say, what was it, December 2016. Didn't have a single experience. Sometimes I would even test them. I would even, just see if they would come out, if I was afraid of them, if, I was sort of trying to test the waters. Was I maybe making this up? Nothing. Not a single experience. My room had never been quieter. My mind had never been quieter. For the first time in at least many weeks of being under their attack, I had a full night's sleep. I had multiple of those, and could actually wake up feeling rested and not afraid of these things. It was the best thing. It was the best thing. And this happened. And then some of you are wondering why it was so easy for me to accept Jesus. It happened to me. He happened to me. I mean, besides seeing all the evidence, Jesus happened to me. And it was just, all I had to do was call to him. All I had to do was say, Jesus, help me. Jesus, save me. That's all I had to say. All I had to do to get rid of these disgusting, wicked beings was to just rebuke them in his name. And they would flee. And I kept doing this. November last year, when these things started coming back, I was being more spiritually weak. I was in a lot of distress. A lot of things that happened in November. And I didn't build up my armor, my spiritual armor, very much. And I actually had my second demonic possession, where they would actually enter my body and control me. This happened at that point. I want to talk about that. I don't know if I should talk about it in this video. I've really, really spoken over time. I mean, 1 hour, 12 minutes. I guess I could fit it in. Since I'm talking so much, I might as well throw in this story as well. This is the last story, guys. But in November last year, again, I was in a lot of distress, and I was spiritually very, very weak. And I had this series of nights. I remember it was 3 nights when I would have anxiety. I would wake up with anxiety, and this pain in my chest, as if something was sitting on my chest. And I would be woken up many times that night. It was 3 nights that this would happen, with these symptoms. And I just thought, it's nothing, it's just anxiety, whatever, something. And one of these nights, before I fell asleep, I would hear somebody whisper my name. And I thought this was very, very, creepy. There's someone whispering my name before falling asleep. Okay. And I did not expect it, but that night I was going to be under attack in the most vicious way I have been yet in my entire life. This one takes the prize. This one I haven't topped yet. What happened was, I woke up that night after I had heard that voice whispering my name. In mockery, by the way. It was mocking me. I woke up. I remember it was... What time was it? It was 6 o'clock? 5 o'clock in the morning? I woke up seeing a big black shadow flying over me. It was flying across me and coming over me, as if it was gonna come towards me, pretty much. And this happened. I'm talking a few seconds here. Everything happened so fast. So I would lie in my bed. I would wake up and I would see this giant shadow coming across and coming towards me. And all of a sudden, the weirdest thing that happened that I've never ever experienced in my life. I became this being. It came into my body after it flew over me, this shadow. It came into my body, and my body got locked, like just like it happened in those dreams I had. But this happened in real life. I was awake, fully awake. My body got locked all of a sudden with my hands tied like this. And my eyes, I couldn't even move my eyeballs. Totally still. And I felt this wave of sorrow. Imagine your worst case of sorrow. Somebody you loved so much who died, who recently passed. Imagine that sorrow. It came over me at that moment. And a wave of perversion, just feelings of, imagine all kinds of sexual perversions being fused into one and being shot at your soul. That's what it felt like. And I became, for 10, 20 seconds, I saw the world through the eyes of this wicked being, showering me in this sexual perversion, in this, what did I just say? I don't even remember. It showered me in these awful, awful feelings of sorrow, utter sorrow and agony, that I would lie there still and scream. I would, it felt like I was being thrown in hell. That's literally what it felt like. Like, imagine, how do you even imagine that? I can't even tell you to relate. I've never in my life felt so much evil at one point in time. Feeling what this disgusting, wicked, and I mean literally wicked, restless, just angry, mocking, all these emotions in one demon, terrorizing me, taking over me, and then me becoming it. It was the worst thing. It was the worst thing. Because at the same time as I was experiencing all this terrible feelings, I was also aware of my own self. So it was, I became the demon, but I was also aware of my soul and my own conscience. So I would also, at the same time as I became it, I would also be in pain and screaming in agony. And while this happened, I was being flung up and down in my bed. I was being, it was awful. I was being flung up and down my bed, and then this kept on going for maybe 10, 20 seconds, and I did everything in my power to make my tongue move, and it would just come out in it was vibrating. It couldn't even barely say the words, but I was saying, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. I was saying it over and over again. I was saying, Jesus, help me. Jesus, save me. And then I said, in the name of Yeshua, I command you, evil spirit, to go away right now. You can, and I kept on saying that you can, you can taunt my flesh, but you can't have my soul. And I said this, and I remember when I said, in the name of Yeshua, this demon that had taken over me, I was at the same time being this demon. While it took over me and I said, in the name of Yeshua, it got so angry that it flung me again up and down, and it punished me. Throughout this entire thing, it had its a grip around my chest, holding onto it and flunging me up and down. But when I uttered those words, it got angry. And I remember the left hand of mine. Everything happened so fast. I can't even explain it. That moment, it was as if when I said in the name of Yeshua and it did this, my hand got burnt. I have never experienced such a thing. My left hand, as it was being held still and fast, it got burnt, and I was being punished. And then I kept on going and saying, when I said that, the end of that sentence, that you can never have my soul, the strangest thing just happened. It just disappeared. It disappeared as quickly as it had entered me, and I could move my body normally. I could move it normally. My eyes, my mouth, my body, it would let go like this, just this fast. And I felt pure. I felt cleansed. The same feeling that I felt, but not as much happiness as last time, but that feeling that I felt last time when Jesus saved me. I felt this again, but this time I was in total shock. That entire morning I would cry and I would mourn, pretty much. I would mourn, and I've never in my entire life been so afraid of just, it wasn't, I don't know how to explain it. I feared for the souls of, I've never cared for so much in my life for people's souls. I would think, just the only thing that came to my mind all the time and that I kept uttering was, God, please never ever put me through this again. Never ever, let me go to hell. I just 10 seconds of being like this being. A lifetime of that. I would never want to experience that. And I prayed for everyone. I prayed for every Christian. I prayed for everyone. Every human being in this world, for their souls, because I wouldn't want even the worst enemy to experience what I experienced. It was terrifying, and I thought for a second that I had a glimpse into hell, pretty much. If that's, the contrast of that kind of evil versus how I felt when I woke up, I just realized we have so much potential. We are so closer than we think to heaven. We really are. We're not as bad as these entities. We're not as bad as these wicked beings. So don't lose hope. If you're out there, you're a faithful Christian, you're doubting in your faith and all that, don't lose hope. After that experience, I just realized you are so far away. You are so far away from what those things were. The things that I felt, I can't even put it to words. There is no such evil in this world. Even the most evil man in this world doesn't have that evil. We're talking about the worst kinds of evil. So you can feel safe in the sense that you are not that evil, and there is so much potential and hope in you. So don't be discouraged. Maybe that's why God said so. Told us not to be discouraged and be dismayed. Because we are not even close to that evil. We don't have that in us. I don't know, guys. I really would like to know from you, what do you think happened? Why did my hand get burned? What was going on? While all of this happened, it felt as if Jesus was there with me. I couldn't see him, but it felt like he had come to my rescue. I don't know if my hand got burnt because he helped me. I don't know what happened, but it felt as if Jesus was there with me. And I had those feelings of being pured, cleansed, and saved after this incident. So I was in a lot of distress. I wasn't sure what had happened, and I was up that entire night just mourning for this world. I've never held on to the Bible so hard in my life. It was the scariest, probably the scariest, worst demonic experience that I've had. And after that, I just took my faith more seriously than I have yet, in the sense that I have recognized the very true importance of studying and learning the scriptures, of really, really diving into your faith and really learning what it is about, so that you can get this spiritual armor, so that you can learn how to protect yourself from these things. I've received so much good advice from you guys, who've told me that fasting is a good idea, praying, is a good idea. All these things are really good to protect me. I think, because I've had another demonic experience after this, where a demon showed it himself to me. He was floating over me. It happened a few weeks ago. I think I'm dealing with a very powerful demon here. Perhaps all that stuff that I went through when I left Islam and I became Christian, perhaps they brought a very strong demon. And maybe that it's been the same one that's been controlling me and terrorizing me all this time. I don't know. Let me know what you think, but I will take this very seriously. This is not a good thing at all. And I'm becoming even more serious with my faith than I was before. Because this has to end. And I know, I've noticed now that it helps. We are able to rebuke these things in the name of Jesus. But if we want to get rid of them for a very long time, if we want, some more complete protection from them, maybe it requires more work, spiritual work, in the sense that we have to learn more about our faith. We have to do more things to strengthen our spirit, to protect it from these things. So I'm very aware of that, and I want to thank you guys for reminding me of this. I also have received advice about getting baptized. I'm going to look into it. I've gotten in contact with a pastor who I'm going to meet soon, very, very soon. And this pastor, I'm going to ask about getting baptized. It would be very, very good to get baptized, I think. So that's just an overall... I didn't even tell you all of it, and it took me 1.5 hours. But that's an insight into what I've experienced. And why is it so important that I tell you this, that I share these experiences with you? For the obvious reason that, have you been through the same things? Have you experienced what I've experienced? Have you felt that kind of emotions? Have you been overwhelmed sometimes at night, especially between the hours of 3 and 7? Have you been attacked by these things in different shapes? Do you recognize the things I'm talking about? Do you recognize these emotions? Have they happened to you and there hasn't been a good explanation why? Have you had demonic encounters when you've been at your weakest? When you have gone away from Islam? Or when you have become Christian? What does it look like for you? I want you to really, really reflect and take it seriously. That's my point. Don't disregard this as a normal thing. Don't shove it under the carpet, but recognize this for what it is. You're dealing with a spirit world. You are at war with principalities, with evil powers. This is not a war with the flesh. According to the Bible, that's how it works. And take it seriously. If you're a believer in Christ, you should be able to rebuke these things in the name of Christ. I highly recommend that you try it and then tell me what happened, but because it worked for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Very quick before I leave, I just want to ask you, do you know a way where I can communicate with you guys all at once maybe, or perhaps one-on-one, if we could have a video chat or a phone chat, whatever it could be, where we could see each other and interact through voice and video. If you know a method like that, that's safe to use, that, where you cannot really be tracked, where you cannot, have your IP address revealed, all that stuff. I want it to be safe, really. If you know a platform like that, please let me know, because I would love to get in touch with so many of you. I've received many messages of people who have sought my advice and who have experienced what I've experienced, who can relate to me, who want to talk to me about all of this stuff. I would love to talk to you guys, but I need to do it in a safe manner. And if you have any advice on how, please let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all. God bless you all. And I'll see you in the next video.